All the I don't even call or bad ideas.
You're listening to the Breece Creator Podcast. I'm Lee Breece. I am so excited to tell you I've moved across the street in two directions to record this podcast. I can't wait to tell you where I am. In this project, hear a conversation about an awesome building, Makerspaces, my first woodworking project in months, and tons more. As always, great stories to share and ideas to talk about in this episode. Whether you make brownies for yourself or have a cooking show on cable that I never watch, amateur or expert, there's something in this episode just for you. You have no idea how pumped I am right now. Your day is about to get a lot brighter. It all starts now. Okay, so first off, that was all a lie. I am not actually in the place where I said I was going to be. I was so upset. I was hoping I could record this podcast in the new Bechtel Innovation and Design Center at Purdue University. Like I said, I'm a college student now, going to Purdue University, and this really awesome place just opened, and I was hoping I could really connect the podcast and the building. Sadly enough, the building opened up a week ago, and of course, you know, it takes a couple months, maybe a year or two, before they work out all the kinks at a brand new building. So they closed it for construction today. Sadly, I cannot record from there. But then, even after that, you know, the college campuses now have a tremendous amount of study space, which includes private conference rooms, empty classrooms, anywhere where there's a door, desk, table, large screens, computers, outlets is considered a study space. You even see people sitting on the floor, on the sidewalk, wherever. It's just studying is a very ambiguous term nowadays. So there's a lot of kids out there doing a lot of different things to get their studies done, so to say. But anyway, so I went to the brand new building I talked about in a couple episodes ago, which is the walk after what was probably a half an hour to hour of searching for a building with an open conference room. Oh my goodness. I went to the Honors College South, which is the other building. I'm in North. They have some conference rooms in there. They were all full. I went to Kroc Leadership Center. Also, no conference rooms available. Then I went all the way to the other, not really the other side of campus, but across a half of campus, which Purdue is a very large university, so walking across a half of campus is pretty significant, especially when I wore a very heavy jacket on a mid-60s kind of day. Then I got to the Walk, which is the Wilmeth Active Learning Center, or the multi-million-dollar study hall, as I refer it to be, and they have conference rooms there, but with this new building, the thing is that trying to get a place to study in this building is like trying to find a ticket to the Super Bowl. So this is always the last place I go to actually find a place to study, which is very ironic because it's a study hall, which is supposed to be for studying, but when you can't find a space, it's not worth trying, right? So they have a bunch of conference rooms here. I went up and down the 4 floors trying to find an empty place where I could sit down and record this podcast, and I couldn't find anything open. But they actually have some classrooms in this building, and what's kind of it's kind of ambiguous because I really don't understand whether they're like actually classrooms for a class, if they're just places for people to study, maybe they're a presentation space. So I tentatively try to avoid classrooms just because I don't really know what the situation is. But as I sit here right now, it's actually it's almost exactly a time when a class should start. So I think I'm okay now. There's no one in here. There's no one coming in. We're all set. So I'm recording this from a classroom in the Walk, not the Innovation Center. Gosh darn it. And all the energy I spent from being pumped for recording the podcast in the Innovation Center, I kind of lost on my constant up and down the stairs, going across campus, all this walking. I am really hot. I'm sweaty. I'm pretty drained right now, but I mean, it's the morning, the day's still early. I can still feel a lot better going into the day. So that's the other stupid thing too. I mean, it's not like it's prime time studying time. I mean, don't these people have class? Like, why is it all study spaces are full? I mean, I know college is very, it's very lax in the sense that you don't have classes all the time. Like, you don't have class after class after class like you do in high school. But I mean, at the same rate, like, you would expect the level of, or the number of people in some of these spaces to kind of diminish, just because it's like it's in the middle of the day. You're supposed to be in class. Like, come on, people. I mean, okay, I don't want to date the podcast, but it's lunchtime. It is literally 11:30 right now when I'm recording this, and like, it's still packed here. Like, I look out the window from the classroom I'm in, and there's people everywhere in the WALK, or the Wilmeth Active Learning Center. But when I came to school originally, at least before then, I asked some former Purdue students, because I was fortunate enough to interact with some people who graduated. I have a really good friend who graduated from Purdue 2 years ago, and then I met some people working at the nursery and whatnot who just graduated from Purdue. And I asked them, I said, well, when you were a freshman, where did you study? Because typically, as a freshman, you're trying to figure everything out and whatnot. So, I mean, a lot of people say they typically study in their room. If you're in a frat house, you may or may not study in your room. Maybe you go to, you find your place at the at the leadership center, or maybe at the WALK, or you find this nice little desk somewhere. And it's kind of like when you walk into a classroom and you've been sitting in the same place for 5 weeks, and then all of a sudden someone else decides to sit there. It's kind of like that with studying. You have your place to study, and then all of a sudden you want to go study, and then someone's taken that space. It's kind of like, ugh. Grr. I rarely ever do homework in my room. The only reason I really ever do homework in my dorm room is when I need a double monitor, or a double monitor would be helpful. Like when I'm watching a lecture and I'm trying to take notes, or I'm trying to multitask, or I need to have two programs open at one time. And the thing is that like the desks at Purdue are actually like really, really small. So there's not really a whole lot of room to do stuff. They're very nice desks. I mean, they're faux oak. I mean, they're obviously oak veneer, but a lot of the parts are solid oak. I mean, they're very well built, very durable, supposed to last a long time, but nonetheless very small. And this is the thing I don't understand about some people, is that computer monitors. Okay, people spend $150 to $200, maybe even $300, $400 on a brand new computer monitor. And we're kind of that point technologically where we've kind of like, all of the junk monitors are no longer the big fat TV monitors that used to be a thing like early 2000s and 90s. Everything before the early 2000s was like big fat monitor. I think we're past that phase. So if you go to like a thrift shop, or you go to like Goodwill, they have a lot of good monitors. Like really good monitors, actually. It depends on how you define really good monitor, but all of the monitors that I've had, I've probably bought like 3 or 4 of them from Goodwill. I don't know why I keep buying so many, but like they're so cheap. You can get a monitor at Goodwill. Like if you go to 50% off sale on the first Saturday of every month, you can get like a monitor for like $5. I mean, like, why would you ever spend $300 or $400 on a monitor? And they're not bad monitors either. I mean, some of them are small. I was very fortunate in that I actually found a huge monitor. I can't think of how big it is. It's got to be like 17 or 18 inches probably, I would guess. Has speakers built into it. It's a really nice monitor, and that's the monitor I decided to bring to Purdue to put on my incredibly small desk. But it's great. And probably, honestly, when I buy my new desktop setup, whenever that's going to be, I will probably buy the desktop, like the computer, the monitor will be from Goodwill. The keyboard will probably be from Goodwill. The mouse will probably be from Goodwill. The speakers will probably be from Goodwill. It's just like, technology is to the point, honestly, we went through a lot of technological innovation very rapidly from like the time, like the 70s when Microsoft and Apple were getting on a foot up until like now. I would say, maybe give it, Maybe we might be there already. You can make the argument that we're to the point where technology, I'm not going to say it's out of innovations, but it's kind of like, how much have washers changed since 1950? How much have dishwashers, refrigerators, how much have appliances changed in the last 50 years. Since their inception, they made exponential change until they finally came until like Maytag and Frigidaire kind of established themselves in the mid to late 50s, and you see those machines lasting for upwards of 30, 40. I mean, my grandma still has the same oven and refrigerator from when they moved into that house in like 1954 or 1950 something. I really don't know. I just pulled that number out of the top of my head, but I mean, my grandma has the same refrigerator and the same oven as when my mom lived in that house when she was growing up in the 70s. So it's the stuff lasts after it's been well established and developed. And I think we might be to that point with technology, like smartphones, laptops, hard drives, MP3 players, headphones. We might be getting to the point where they're actually starting to build quality items that are going to last maybe 10 years. I would say we're either at to that point right now or give it like 3 or 4 more years. And then we're at that point where when you buy a laptop, it's going to be a good laptop for 5, 6, 8, maybe 10 years rather than like any time up to this time where a laptop was really only good for 2 years, 3 years at like the most. You could make the same comparison with cars. I mean, cars in the 70s would get terrible gas mileage, and you could only put like 70 to 80,000 miles on a car before it would basically fall apart. Whereas now, I mean, you got cars with incredibly great MPG and cars that you can put 350,000 miles on. That's more along the line. Pickup trucks usually last longer than a car. So maybe with a pickup truck like 300 to 350, but I would say the average car now probably lasts between 200 and 250,000 miles, which is a complete leap from where we were back in the 70s and the 80s. And I think technology is going to be the same way, which is why I'm very comfortable with the laptop I have right now. As of now, it does everything I need it to. My only complaint is that it doesn't have a lot of hard drive space, which is not an issue because it's an issue because I can't install a lot of programs on the computer. That's really my main complaint. It only has 128 gigabytes of solid state. I don't ever store anything on my computer. I store everything on OneDrive, and then I store everything on a separate external hard drive, which I probably should really buy a new one. This one's probably 4 years old, approximately, so I know a guy that buys a new external hard drive like every 5 years. He just buys a new one so he doesn't have to worry about it going bad. But I'm not sure how long I'm going to let mine last. I mean, my life's on this hard drive, so I really should actually kind of like either A, back it up, or B, get a new one. I guess when you consider the price of that, though, I'm trying to think. An external hard drive probably costs like $150, maybe $200. That's probably overestimating. It's probably not that expensive. But like I'm trying to think the OneDrive plan, like if I were to buy a terabyte of space on OneDrive, I'm trying to think how much that would be. Like, I mean, $7 or $10 a month. It's somewhere between $10 to $30 is probably how much that is. I should really do my research before I do this podcast. But so if you do the math, like let's say it's $10 a month. I'm sure it's more than that, but let's just say it's $10 a month to get a subscription to, say, OneDrive or Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever you use as your cloud storage source. I would say that's probably, so say you pay $100 for an external hard drive. I guess that would get you 10 months, I guess. So maybe if it were cheaper, maybe if it was like $1 or $2 a month for a terabyte on OneDrive, then maybe it might make sense to go with OneDrive over buying a new hard drive, because then you're actually, you're going to even out in terms of you're going to buy a new passport, which is what mine is, a new external hard drive every 5 years or so, and then you're paying like $1, $2, $5 per month to subscribe to OneDrive. So that's kind of interesting to think about. Where technology is going. Like I said, I'm very happy with my laptop. I really hope I don't have to buy another one. I'm thinking this one's going to last me a long time, mainly because I'm on a timeline of like one big purchase every year. Like when I say big purchase, like $1,000 purchase per earnings season. And my earnings season is basically since I'm at college now, my earnings season's in the summer. So like at the end of the summer, I'll buy like one thing. Which in this case, like last year, it was my really nice camera. The year before that, I didn't buy anything really nice. I guess you could say I made the bandsaw. That was, it wasn't a significant purchase, but it was a significant item. I would say, and my plan for the future, well, actually the year before that I bought my laptop, so then last year I didn't buy anything. this past year I bought a really nice camera. Next year, the big purchase is going to be a desktop computer, which is going to be a very significant purchase. One thing I really want to debate in this podcast at some point, not going to do it right now, is building versus buying a new desktop computer. Not a laptop, like the box, the brick, whatever you want to call it, the computer itself. And only thing I'll say about it right now is that you can think about, if you build it once, you're gaining all of the skills. If something breaks, you know what to do. You learn how to code, how to program some of the things. You learn how a computer works. It may be a good thing to do once. I'm pretty sure, if I built a computer now, I probably wouldn't be happy with it because it's my first run. But at the same time, it's I really only want to do it once because, after you gain the skills, there's no real benefit. I mean, there's always a benefit to doing another project. Don't get me wrong, but the time it takes to build a computer and the money amount, depending on how sophisticated you want your computer to be, it may be better off just to buy one, because multi-billion-dollar companies like Dell and Apple, they can all make computers. HP, they can all make computers on a mass scale, incredibly cheaper. It just depends how customized you want your computer to be. And I had a conversation with a computer guy a while ago, asking about what kind of specs I should look for and whatnot when going out to consider whether to buy a computer or make a computer. But anyway, that's my significant purchase for this year. Next year, it'll probably be a lens for my camera. And just in case I actually really am serious about getting into photography. And then at that point, I'll be to the point where I'm looking at I'm going to get an apartment. I'm going to have to buy a car. I'm going to start paying insurance. I'm going to have to do all these other things. And my big purchase once a year will probably either become a car or an apartment or a house or something. And the other thing is that, I don't even consider adding tools to the shop. I don't really ever think about a big purchase. I don't ever think about buying a new planer, which I really honestly should do. Well, it's really just, I've destroyed the knives. I've said that before in previous episodes. I've destroyed the knives on my joiner, my planer. I don't need new ones. I just need to buy new knives. I don't need to buy new machines. But I don't think about buying a lathe. I don't think about buying more drills. Everything I have is enough to get by. It's like a company. If the company has what it needs to get by, it doesn't really need to improve its capital. It doesn't need to buy more equipment, doesn't need to buy new equipment, doesn't need to do, there's no need to invest in the company when what you have right now is what is getting you by, in the sense that I'm making money off what I have, but it's not enough money to reinvest in the shop, so to speak. And I have enough drills, I have a good enough power equipment, and basically what my capabilities are now is enough for me and what I do in the shop. It's different for everybody. I am very fortunate, and I said this a million times in the podcast, that I am very fortunate to have inherited a very good start shop. That's how I phrase it. A shop is never complete. I'm very fortunate that my dad built this separate building from my house as a workshop, and he bought equipment for it, and he organized it, and he has all these workbenches and tools in there. I am very fortunate to have that. I cannot imagine trying to talk to somebody who's trying to start out woodworking for the first time, or start a makerspace for the first time, and trying to get that investment to buy all the equipment you need to have a really good shop, because it's expensive. It cost $30,000 for my dad to build the shop. That's mainly, I say it's $30,000. It was $20,000 in brick. The whole thing's bricked, which is really nice, but at the same time, brick's expensive. At another rate, all the equipment inside the shop, I would give an estimate 10, maybe $15,000 of tools. That's power tools. I wouldn't include hand tools. Hand tools are stuff you just acquire over time. It's the little things that add up. I would estimate probably $15,000 on power tools. That's probably pretty close. And I can't imagine, especially me being a young person, I can't imagine trying to open up a shop for the first time. Now, I will admit that all the stuff that I have is not entry level. I didn't go to Ace or Lowe's and buy a table saw. That's not I have a combination saw, which is a combination of a contractor saw and a cabinet maker saw. It's not a contractor saw. A contractor saw is the cheapest type of table saw. I don't have the benchtop drill press. I actually have a standing drill press. That's not entry level. I have a 12.5-inch, 13-inch approximately. Planer, the DeWalt. It's not professional. It's not a professional planer, but at the same rate, it's not a Harbor Freight planer. It's not a Canadian Tire planer. Joiner, it's a 6-inch joiner. That's kind of, it's not a benchtop joiner, but at the same rate, it's not the highest quality joiner I could have. Although I don't really use it. I mean, I have router tables. The router tables I have aren't entry level. Anyway, you get the point. You could open up a shop for a lot cheaper. You could open up a makerspace for a lot cheaper, which is a great transition to what I really wanted to hit home in this episode, which is the Innovation and Design Center here at Purdue. I didn't think really it was a makerspace. That's not really the impression that I got from it. But after reading up more on makerspaces and learning more about what makerspaces are, I'm learning that it's basically a makerspace. The reason I was kind of thinking that it really isn't is because of how supervised everything is, and that essentially you have to get they want you to submit your project and they'll approve whether you can actually go to the shop to make it or not. So basically, that's essentially is getting a permit. Like, you're getting a permit to make your project. I thought that was because of how supervised it was. Plus, they say, hey, you can do your project now. Go work with a TA or teacher assistant on your project. So you don't get to do it yourself. You have to, it's kind of like a learning community. I didn't think of it as a makerspace, but after reading more, watching a TED Talk, a makerspace basically is a community space where you pay membership and you can use the equipment. They have classes and whatnot, which makerspaces are really awesome. I feel like makerspaces at some point in the near future, probably by the time I'm 50, makerspaces will be just as common as gyms. The fitness centers that you have in the strip malls in your hometown. When you go to the gym, I'm talking about the health center, the YMCA, they'll be as common as those businesses, because basically that's what a makerspace is. You get membership to a place where you get to use expensive equipment. That's exactly what a gym is. That's why people have membership, because it's expensive equipment, and not everybody wants to not everybody wants to buy a treadmill. I would never buy a treadmill. I live in the country, the road is my treadmill. But there's people out there who can't afford to buy really nice equipment, or don't really need to, because they just need to work on this one project or whatnot. And I think especially as we become more urbanized, and especially right now, all this new equipment that's coming out, like 3D printers and CNC machines right now, is so expensive. That's why I think makerspaces are really going to start growing in popularity. If they're not popular already, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I have my own shop, and I also live in outside the suburbs, so I'm not really in the right type of area for a makerspace to pop up. But I'm sure makerspaces right now are already growing in popularity. I mean, I've read countless blog posts. I've watched videos of people who've opened up makerspaces in their hometown, and it's just such a revolutionary idea. And it's so cool. I mean, it's like the McDonald's of making. There should be a makerspace in every town. In every town, there's a school, there's a church. And then Ray Kroc said there should be a McDonald's in every town. So now there should be a church, school, McDonald's, and makerspace in every town. And I bet you out there somewhere, there's already someone who's trying to franchise makerspaces. Like, a lot of the business, there's a lot of gyms out there that are franchised. There's gyms out there that are, they're not local. They're all across the country. Like Anytime Fitness, Planet Fitness, they're everywhere. So I'm pretty sure you could do the same thing with makerspaces. You just kind of have to have a revolution of making, which is what that's the mission of this podcast. We're trying to create a revolutionary of people, trying to get people interested in making, creating, being hands-on, working with their hands, making things, being creative. That's what the mission of this podcast is. So I guess I'm already doing my part to kind of contribute to the maker revolution, at least somewhat anyway, to the best of my ability. But once we get people excited about making and creating, then makerspaces will explode, and maybe you could franchise it. But of course, if you don't franchise it by that point, then it's probably a little bit too late. But after watching some videos and reading some articles, I got really excited. Like, I want to open up a makerspace. Makerspaces right now are mostly owned by nonprofit groups, but I'm sure for-profit people will come along and have makerspaces. But I had a dream that came to me 3 or 4 years ago. It wasn't a dream I had while I was sleeping. It was just, I think it would be really cool one day to own a place where people can come and build things and work on projects. Kids could come after school and learn how to woodwork and machine and code and whatnot. And I thought it would be really cool to have a very interactive environment for the community. And I can't believe it took me all the way until now to realize that basically what would be really awesome to do is own a makerspace. I just think that'd be so cool. Because you could watch people learn, you watch people grow, you watch people interact with each other, and making's a very interactive experience. I mean, it's one of those things that you always hear about, son and dad bonding over their time, working on the car or whatnot. It's a very it's something we kind of gotten away from. I mean, society as a whole has kind of become disfragmented, but it used to be that, dad and son would go out and work, do yard work during the day, or they would go work on the car sometimes, or it just, it was an incredible bonding opportunity that we've just kind of escaped from with the way culture is nowadays. And I would love to see a return, to the sense that, friends could build things, mom and son, mom and daughter, dad and son, dad and daughter. It's something that we've kind of lost in society, and just that connection you get from working on a project with someone is something that I feel like is very valuable to the development of us as a people, especially because there's no way to apply a social issue to making. You're both there for one purpose, and that is to do the project. You can't discriminate. You can't deprive someone of their rights. It's a very non-social. I mean, it's a non-social issue thing to do, which is like what society needs more of. Get away from all these social issues and start doing what actually improves people's lives, which is conversations and connecting with people, which is what making really does. And I feel like that's going to be one of the elements that really brings it back. But going back to the Bechtel Innovation and Design Center here at Purdue University, it's right next to the Honors College, in the sense that if you go across the street and then you go across the street again, it's right there. It's kind of like, think of the square that is an intersection, and then look at the diagonal. It's kind of like they're both, the Honors College and the Innovation Center are both at they're diagonally across from each other. They're both at the corner of the intersection, but that's more information than you need to know. But I visited there 2 days ago, talked with the guys who run it. The soul of it, so like the program that's actually there is called AFL. I don't know what it stands for, but that's basically that's the makerspace. It used to be in the basement of Armstrong, which is just an engineering hall here on campus. It used to be there. Then they decided to build a separate space for it, which is now the Bechtel Innovation and Design Center, which Bechtel was an alumni that donated a significant amount of money to build the building. That's why they named it after him. I really don't know much more besides that. And then now it's a makerspace. Oh my goodness, there is so much expensive equipment in there. Water jets, lathes, metal lathes, CNC machines, gantry router, which apparently is the sophisticated term for whatever CNC machine they have in there, table saw, planer, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's such a cool little place, and they have conference rooms and places you can study, or group places you can talk about your project or whatever. Very communal. There's places where you can work on your car. They even have what I really wish I knew what these lifts were called, but they have what you like, the thing that runs across the ceiling that you can like move heavy stuff with. It's you pull the chain and you lift stuff up and move it around or whatever. They have like garage space you can use. They have a basement where you can work on stuff. It's just a really awesome facility. But the AFL is the actual program that runs the building, which is you become a member there, similar to a makerspace, except you don't have to pay a membership. You take all these safety quizzes, you submit your project, and then once you get your project, like I said, you work with a TA on your project using all of the various equipment, or you could just become a TA, which is a teaching assistant, which is a paid position. I essentially call being a TA, I call it being a lifeguard. Like, that's basically what you do. You're there while people are working on other stuff, and you're supervising, and you're making sure no one's doing anything stupid. So that being a lifeguard, that's what I would call it. The really cool thing about being a TA is that you don't have to submit you don't have to submit your design. You don't have to get a permit for your project, as I say. You can just go in there and work, do whatever you want, use machines. And part of the training for being a TA is that you have to know how to use every single piece of equipment in that shop, which is like there's probably close to like 50 or 60 different machines in there and different operations you can do and whatnot. So it's a really cool facility. I'm really excited to become a TA. I'm in the process right now. It takes about a year to go through all of the training and whatnot. So probably next year I'll be a TA. But at the same rate, it'd be really nice to have a shop here at Purdue, especially with really, really expensive equipment like the 3D printers and all the CNC machines, which I'm really excited to have access to the CNC machines because if you don't remember, I made this bandsaw from wood. It's Matthias Wandel's design, and it's okay. I hand manufactured all of the parts, but I would really like to remake a lot of the parts just because when you cut things by hand, it doesn't come out as even. So I'm very excited. I can CNC all of the parts when I'm here, and I was telling the guys who are in charge that was the first project I was going to do, and here I am thinking that I need to re-CNC all these parts out of wood. And the guy's saying that he says, well, if you're just going to CNC all the parts, then you might as well just, you might as well just make all the parts out of metal. Which I really like that idea because I would absolutely love to get some metal blade guides. I know Matthias Wandel does a really good job of making these really nice, sophisticated wood blade guides. But it's like if I have access to a shop with free material, like why not? Like the blade guides that I have just aren't cutting it. No pun intended. They just aren't cutting it. Hopefully that all works. I'm thinking about all the parts I want to remake on the saw, like the trunnions, the blade guides, just to name a few, and think about what exactly I want to make out of metal. The other thing I like about the bandsaw being wood, though, is how light it is. Like, machines are heavy. And the very nice thing about this is that it's still heavy. Like, it probably weighs like 150 pounds, but you can still pick it up and move it around yourself. Like, you can't pick up and move around your table saw. So the only other negative about that though is that it, especially as the bandsaw spins towards its resonant frequency, is that it vibrates really bad. So I probably need to add some weight to it. But I mean, like I said, it's very nice that it's portable. I can carry it around. It's it's one of those things I can take outside if I wanted to, or throw it in the back of the truck and take it somewhere. Very cool. I'm not exactly sure how many of the parts I'll make out of metal, but we'll just have to see. Like I said, I got to become a TA first. I got to take all the safety quizzes, go through all the volunteer activities, go through all the training. But it's a really cool place to have on campus. And what's really nice is that it used to be that only engineering students could become TAs because they used to pull all their TAs out of this manufacturing class. That's engineering, core, basically. Engineering core study. Like you have to take it in order, to graduate with an engineering degree. But because they couldn't pull enough TAs from engineering, they opened it up to all students. So I'm very glad as a liberal arts major to be able to have access to the facility and be a TA, which is very ironic because I'm sitting there telling the guy who's in charge of that, I'm telling him I'm a liberal arts major, and he says, "Oh yeah, man, I'm a political science and philosophy major, man." And I was asking him what brought him here, and it was a very misguided discussion because he's actually not a student. He just runs the. I thought he was a student. He just runs the. He's the front desk person basically. But he graduated from his. He got a philosophy and poli-sci degree from somewhere, and then his girlfriend brought him here. He didn't really answer the question about what brought him to the actual Makerspace itself. He's a cool guy. I love all the people there. They're all really excited to have, they're all like me. They're all really excited to see people take an interest in working with their hands. College is very much a place where it's, your legs are a way of getting your head to class. That's what your body is. So it's really nice to see that people are excited to get to work with their hands and use their mind in combination with their hands to make all kinds of cool things. Like, I don't know if you've ever been to a maker fair. I haven't. But they have some really cool stuff at maker fairs, and this is what's required to go into the 21st century. If we really want a prosperous future, a rich future, then we have to understand that boundless creativity, that is promoting individualism and creativity and encouraging people to exercise their ideas. That is what's required to have innovation in the 21st century, because kids are acquiring all kinds of skills, but it's all about how they can apply their skills. And yeah, it's great to know how to design something. It's great to know how to create a schematic. But at the end of the day, if you have a degree, what is it if society can't build anything or make anything out of it? And I talked about it in the last episode of the podcast about how we're having a shortage of construction workers, but kind of as a greater cause, we're having a shortage of people who actually know how to make things. We're not talking about design. We're talking about pick up a hammer and actually put a nail in a wall. We're talking about fabrication, artisans, plumbers. I mean, we're talking about steam fitters. Anything you can think of, there's a shortage of. Anybody who works with their hands, there's a shortage. That's because it's always thought that, the trades are for stupid people. It's always thought of that college is by far the superior route in terms of a lifestyle. Personally, it's all about what you think is rewarding. And to me, being able to see a physical project, being able to see something, having something tangible as evidence that I actually worked hard means a lot. Because I look back on high school, and I think about all of the essays I wrote. Think about all of the stupid projects, all of the homework I had to do to prepare for class, all of the tests, and I walk away from that. All the presentations, I walk away from that and just think about what am I walking away with from high school? I look back and I try to think about what memories do I have from high school. What are the tangible things that I have to walk away with that I'm going to remember, that I'm gonna, like the skills I'm going to remember gaining from high school, all the things I'm going to remember doing. I think back and it's like nothing. Like, I loved being drum major, and I have the video, I have the trophy to show that, yes, the band did a really awesome thing when I was a senior. All right. But there's nothing else tangible that I get to walk away with to have evidence that I actually learned something in high school. I have the bandsaw. That, I look back and I'm like, I made time. I decided, hey, I'm not going to work on schoolwork for these 2 weeks. I'm not going to study. I'm going to build this bandsaw. And I look back and the bandsaw is what I remember making. The bandsaw is what I remember as my accomplishment during senior year. It's that. I don't remember whatever grade I got in a test. I don't remember what grade I got in a class. I remember making that saw, and every time I look at it, it just stirs up all those emotions. I get all feely and fuzzy over how I felt making that project and how awesome it felt to be able to actually go from trash to a usable piece of equipment. And I don't think kids are getting enough of that. I look at all the other classes I took in high school. There's just I don't get any other feeling. You can't look at your report card 30 years from now and see an A+ in 10th grade English and have emotions stirred up inside you about what it meant to get that A. I look at the bandsaw and it's a completely different game. I look at every project I have. I look at the very first thing that I made, which currently right now is debated because I have two things that I know I made very, very early on in my life. I just don't know which came first. But I look at those things and think about, man, this was me making this when I was 6. And it stirs up so many questions, and you just feel completely differently. I have all these other woodworking projects that I look at, and it's a different road trip. It's a different roller coaster in your in your mind than all these philosophical classes are. Or I say I got to come up with a better term for school classes, like all the classes where you're there to show up to learn. You just don't look back, and you don't have those kind of memories. People don't remember high school for school. Everybody remembers high school for the things they did outside of school. All the parties, the girlfriends, the athletes remember their state championships and their regional titles, and that's what makes high school fun. No one thinks high school is fun because of the classes they took. I think people are going to find that life is a lot more rewarding when you have tangible objects like that to look back on. I mean, even any kind of art. I mean, it doesn't have to just be making. I mean, it could be if you're interested in photography, it could be photographs. If you're a YouTuber, it could be a video that you made. If you're an artist, a painting you made, a craft. If you're a musician, maybe it's a song you wrote. I mean, songs are incredibly Songs, in my opinion, are the closest thing we actually have right now to time travel. Songs are like a time capsule. You discover new music. It always seems to be like a perfect timing with like a life event. Like you always like have a new set of songs. Like every month, you have like a new, 3 or 4, maybe 5 songs that are like your songs, like for that month. Like they're just new to you. You listen to them all the time, and for some reason, those become like your anthem for whatever life event you had going on during that time. And so these songs are like a time capsule in the sense that they capture those emotions that you felt during that life event, and then when you listen to them down the road, they stir up all those emotions again that you felt. I mean, I'm sure there's a neurological way to explain it, but I mean, it's like when you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it's when you break up with them, there are certain songs that really hit you hard and that stir up all those emotions and get all feely and fuzzy, that bring those memories back. And that's why I think music is a great example of time travel. Like I said, anything, just something tangible, something that I don't want to say hobby, because hobby is looked upon as something that somebody does for fun. People do photography, people do woodworking, people do making for a variety of reasons other than just for fun. Like I said, my woodworking isn't for fun. I'm never going to make something for fun. It's always something functional. I'm always making with a purpose. It's always to improve my life. I'm never making a shelf just to throw it away when I'm done with it. Like, that's not the point. Which, by the way, my current woodworking project, I won't say my next woodworking project because I have a million of unfinished projects that's laying around in the shop, but my current project right now is a shelf for my dorm room. Like I said, we have these incredibly small desks in our dorm rooms, but we have these extremely high ceilings. Like the main difference between the new dorms and the old dorms here at Purdue is that the old dorms don't have as high of a ceiling, and it's not just like the ceiling, it's like the space between the ceiling and the next floor. Like for some reason in new buildings, there's an incredibly large amount of space between the ceiling and the actual next floor, and so you have to go up all these high stairs. So like they don't have that in older buildings. So like the 3rd floor of like the Honors College is probably the equivalent of like the 4th floor or the 5th floor in Owen Hall, which is like a building, which is a dorm that was built like back in the 1960s. But anyway, so they have these really high ceilings. So I'm making the shelf to put on top of this really strong and sturdy desk, to hopefully take some of that vertical space away and use it. I can put stuff on and whatnot. And that's my first time getting back in the shop since I wasn't even there that often over the summer. Honestly, I mean, that's really my first time getting in the shop since May. I mean, I made these Adirondack chairs for my uncle, and that was like my last major project, in all honesty. So I spent a lot of time over fall break, more like fall weekend, or more like any other weekend. I spent a lot of time cleaning up my messes, because when you're in a hurry to, we only have a certain amount of time to build stuff, you tend to like not clean up your mess. And so that had happened like 3 or 4 times in a row. So I'm cleaning up messes from different projects, and like you have all your tools out and whatnot. They're all in the area where you were working, and it's like, oh, I remember that project, or I remember using this tool on that project. And oh yeah, I remember why I spilled all this sawdust all over the floor. And then I finally got working on the shelf. That's what I'm working on right now. I really like. I have this design that like it seems to be like my go-to design when I make shelves or anything in general, that requires like panels. Is I make like this ladder-looking side. I rip 2x4s in half, and then that becomes the posts, and then I just do cross pieces with a bridle joint all the way up and down the this piece. I like it because it ensures that the piece is straight. It's very minimal material, and it's very light. I don't know why. It seems to be my go-to design. So I'll have to post a picture. Actually, I did post a picture of what those sides actually look like on a recent photo on the Breece Woodworking Instagram page. You can check that out on Instagram or Facebook. Always check it out on all of our social media platforms. Hopefully I can get the shelf done. I'm going home this weekend, hopefully, to get more work done on that shelf. I want to make a new paper tray too for my dorm room, but it's really nice to actually get back in the shop. I'm not going to lie. It feels great. Like, I think I mentioned it in the last podcast episode, but I'm slowly learning that like city life just isn't for me. Being around people all the time just isn't for me. Like, people look at me and they think that I'm an extrovert, and I would say yeah. I mean, I get energy from being around people, and I love talking to people. But at the same time, I need time in the shop. Not time to myself. I need time in the shop. People always talked about in high school how they had their hideaway where they could get away from the world. And I'm not going to be all drama and say that that's what the shop was for me, but it really is a place where I can forget everything that's going on outside the shop and just be in the shop. Turn on some music, get some jams going, and just go. Just make. You just get in the zone. And it's like I've said it several times in this episode. It's just like it's an experience that everyone needs to experience. It's an emotion that everyone should feel. And it was just really nice to get up in the morning and go out in the shop. The mist in the air, and it's cool, and it's just really nice to go out into the shop. And the other thing is that my roommates love to stay up all hours of the night. Personally, I wouldn't say I'm a morning person, but I would love to wake up before 7 o'clock, maybe 6. I would say 7. 7 really is a good time to get up. That's a good combination of sleeping in and waking up early. But that requires you to go to bed at 10, 11 o'clock. And campus as a whole just doesn't go to bed till 1 o'clock in the morning, which to me is very frustrating. Because I do my best to try to go to bed early, but at the same rate, it's my roommates are studying in the room. The lights, I'm having to fall asleep with the lights on. I'm having to put earbuds in and listen to music in order to tune out, whatever noise there is in the room. It was very nice to go home, be able to go to bed at 10 o'clock, wake up at 7, go out to the shop, spend all morning in the shop. That was the other crazy thing. It's usually in college, I have one class in the morning, and then it's lunchtime and it's afternoon. But it was at home when it was I woke up and I spent what it felt like forever in the shop in the morning. It was just incredible how much of the day I had because I'd gotten up early, and I hate going to bed late, and I hate waking up late because you lose so much of the day. And really the best part of the day, in my opinion, is the morning. I hate the afternoon. Evening, it's okay, but morning is always my favorite part of the day. I love, for some reason, morning is just you never know what the day is going to be, and the day kind of evolves to be what it's going to be, but there's so much uncertainty in the morning, and for some reason, uncertainty in humans is very satisfying in a weird way. So yeah, I'm going to hit the shop this weekend. I have my truck now, so I kind of have more free range in terms of going back and forth to Purdue and home. It's also nice to have a truck in the fact that I can store some material and tools in the back, and kind of as I go back and forth between the Innovation Center and the Design Center and back to my home shop. So it's a very exciting weekend upcoming. Also, I want to say that coming up in a little over a month, the whole thing that started it all, Breece Woodworking Instagram page, is going to turn a year old. Actually, it feels like it's a lot older. It doesn't feel like it's as young as it is, but I created, I don't know why, I must have had a conversation with one of my uncles or one of my family members at Thanksgiving last year, and I guess those conversations inspired me to create an Instagram page for my woodworking, which was my first of many Instagram pages. I have Breece Woodworking, Breece Creator Podcast, Breece Photography, and my personal Instagram page. A lot of pages to manage. And on top of that, at the radio station I worked at last year, I had to manage all their social media pages. So a lot of social media experience. I could be a social media manager. Boy, would that be fun. But really, I created the page, for very selfish reasons. I more or less created the page as a place where I could document projects. I could document days in the shop. My woodworking was my dad's favorite thing, and yet I don't have a single picture of him in the shop. There's projects that he's made that I know nothing about. What the story was, why he made it, issues with the project, what struggles, what triumphs he had. And the other thing that I think really hits home with me, and what really exemplifies all the things about why I made the page, is that my dad and I, when I was 10 years old, my dad and I built our workshop. He did most of the work, but I looked at the photo album that he has of when we built the shop, and there are, there's pictures of it, slowly being built, and all the framing and the footings and the foundation and whatnot, and the roofing going up and the bricks going on, but all the pictures of the shop being built are of me, or are of the concrete guys and they came in to put in the driveway, or they're of the electrician, And especially every time I look at a photo of me working on the shop, it just makes me really sad. Because my dad put every effort, all the sweat, all the energy, all the blood. He put all the money into building that shop, and that was really his most significant life accomplishment, was building that shop. And it just makes me really, really sad, even to think about right now, that I don't have a single picture of him in the shop, outside the shop, with the shop, building the shop. And to think that something that's belongs to someone so much but have no physical evidence of their belonging to it, it's incredibly depressing. And so that's kind of why I started the Instagram page, because whoever buys the house after my family moves out, I want them to be able to see that someone had a life here. Someone did some incredible, awesome things in the shop. I just want there to be a history, there to be a dialogue about my personal career in woodworking and just the shop in general. I could say the woodworking is my personal Instagram post for woodworking, but at the same rate, it's kind of like a woodworking page for the shop. And that's kind of what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a representation of what happens in that shop. And I'm sure as I get older and I start to move around more often, it'll evolve into something else. But for right now, that's kind of what I want it to be. And I want it to be sacred in that sense. So November 26th, 2017 will be the 1-year anniversary of the Breece Woodworking Instagram page. And then coming up in January, we'll have the 1-year anniversary of the podcast. So those are some birthdays to look forward to for loyal listeners and loyal followers out there. Musicians and artists who release their music and their talent into the public domain give the greatest gift and promote a crowdsourced creative world. In the outro of project number 15 of the Breece Creator Podcast, I want to feature And So It Begins from Artificial Music. Check the show notes on the website to learn more about the song and the content in this episode at breecewoodworking.wixsite.com/creatorpodcast. You can tweet at us on Twitter or follow us on Instagram. I'm Lee Breece. I'll see you next time on the Breece Creator Podcast.